AskReddit by deleted. What's something you learned embarrassingly late in life? It took me 18 years to realize shampoo goes before conditioner. I always wondered why my hair felt silky smooth before I used the shampoo. I'm from Mississippi, and until I was 18 I thought that everyone else in the country counted with their own state. I.e., instead of 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, they would count 1 Nevada, 2 Nevada, or 1 Maryland, 2 Maryland, etc. If you are from Transylvania, then it's 1 RRR, 2 RRR, and so on. It wasn't until I was about 20 that I discovered that you're supposed to add water to condensed soup. Very vividly remember eating condensed tomato soup in my dorm room without any water, so was essentially eating ketchup. That players on American sports teams do not all originally come from the area where their team is from. My dad was fond of framing questions to my brother and or me regarding just what on earth we were doing, up to age 10 or so, when it no longer seemed necessary, using the term pray tell, as in what are you doing with the tools, pray tell? I presumed a prattle was a gentle equivalent to goofball or dummy. One day I corrected my brother about some misconception he had, addressing him as you prattle. "What did you call him?" asked Dad, who happened to be nearby. "A prattle. You call us that all the time." "I do." "Yeah, you say. What is that supposed to be, prattle?" I'd never seen him laugh through a facepalm before. Knowledge is power. Francis Bacon. I didn't know tortilla chips were made out of tortillas until I was 20 years old and saw the line cook at my job cut up a tortilla and throw it in the deep fryer. Oh. Deleted. Similarly, I thought the word masturbate meant something along the lines of an expert or master fisherman. Because you use bait to fish. I don't remember when I learned the truth, but I had used it before for fishing stupidly and never got corrected. The worst one was rape. I thought it meant to stab or cut someone, because of the weapon, the rapier. Too many times as a child joking around I said stop that or I'll rape you instead of stop that or I'll cut you. The worst one was saying my brother annoyed me sometimes that I could just rape him to my girlfriend when I was like 13. I never understood why she looked horrified until later. In other news, I'm big into etymology now and studying the history of words and meanings. I feel like it's because of younger mishaps like these I made, lol. I thought ponies were just baby horses until the age of 23. Edit, until I was 23, I didn't think horses aged like turtles. I'm dumb, but not that dumb. Okay, so I read that as baby horses are known as ponies until they officially become adult horses at the age of 23. Considering that the average lifespan of a horse is like 30 years or something, I was shocked that the commenters below you had thought the exact same statistic as you did. Until I was in school for environmental studies, I thought morning dove was morning dove. I usually heard them calling in the mornings, so morning made sense to me. I just learned this now. Thanks. I was maybe 17 or 18 before learning that it was Timbuktu, not Timbuktu. I thought there was an original Timbuk out there somewhere. I was about 25 when I found out Timbuktu was a real place. I had thought it was just an expression for a faraway place. I thought sedan was a car brand until I was 22. I thought that until I heard the joke, why do chicken coops have 2 doors? Cause otherwise they'd be chicken sedans, and it all made sense. That all the places in France were not named after wines. Some were named after cheeses. Why I was really young, my sister told me she threw her guts up. So I was really afraid of vomiting my entire insides up for years. My older teen sister told my smoker dad that his cough sounded like he was coughing up a kidney. I thought it was totally possible for years. That a prostitute doesn't actually sell a piece of their body. Backstory: my mom and I were watching the scene from Titanic where Jack tells Rose that he painted a one-legged prostitute. I asked my mom what a prostitute was and she told me it's someone who sells their body for money. I could not fathom why someone would sell their leg for like $30. Lol, that was just a perfect confluence of unrelated information to confuse you. It was a completely logical connection to make. Things aren't supposed to start to get blurry at about 15-20 feet. Learned I needed glasses at like 26 from one of these threads. Yes people, you are supposed to be able to see individual leaves on trees. Hope someone else can be helped like I was. I'll never forget the first time I looked up into the night sky after I got glasses, and realized that you can, in fact, see the moon clearly. I assumed people who depicted it in art were taking creative license BC. They knew it should look like that for some reason, and that the human eye was incapable of seeing the moon without also seeing two other, blurrier moons, sort of overlapping it. It blew my mind. I live near the hospital for joint diseases. When I was a kid I thought it was a special hospital for people who had two different diseases at the same time. Person with multiple diseases here. I will raise this at the next meeting with the hope of adopting it. Moving cross country, driving east to west. Crossing from Idaho to Oregon, noticed huge fields with signs for the Ore-Ida Potato Company. So I was in my early 20s when I figured out Ore-Ida wasn't just a brand name but was because their potatoes came from Oregon and Idaho. Similarly, C and AMP, H sugar is for California and Hawaii. When people say quote unquote I thought they were saying quote unquote. I always thought it was quote, end quote. When I was a teenager, I posted a status online that said I was jacking off. I thought that meant you were just bored and wasting time, until my older sister messaged me, horrified. When I was a teenager, I thought the expression to eat someone out meant the same thing as to chew someone out. Unfortunately I was educated on this after I told someone in a church that I wasn't expecting to be eaten out that morning at breakfast. I was 17 LMAO. My parents were divorced the whole time and my mom was not, in fact, taking a vacation LMAO. We're telling our kids that certain actors are on vacation when we need a change of scenery from a certain show like Blippi or Cocomelon or something. That a coma was a coma. Until I was probably 19 I thought it was a coma. I thought you fell into a coma. For the longest time I thought astigmatism was astigmatism, so I think we cancel each other out. I thought all tombstones had cause of death on them, like old Timmy once. RIP must have meant that got ripped to death somehow. The world was scary, haha. Let me tell you about how I thought you were awarded a Pulitzer Prize. Not too late in life but I thought my parents were making rum and cokes until I went to college. Which, I think is a much better name for the drink anyway, rum and coke. I learned that pork and beans are not called cowboy beans. I was 18 and asked a grocery store clerk to help me find the cowboy beans. We were looking everywhere and I was getting frustrated because I know that every store carries these beans. After a while I pick up a pork and beans can with a picture and say, see, it looks just like this. He says, you mean pork and beans? Then I realize that my mom called them that so that I would eat them. The look of disappointment from that grocery store clerk haunts me to this day. Dude, that's fucking hilarious. Oral contraceptive, you mean you can get pregnant just from doing that? That bonsai are not a species of tree, but a way to grow them. Any tree can be a bonsai. I didn't know that. Houston is not the name of the guy astronauts talk to. Houston, we have a problem. Your name isn't Houston. I suspected it was the same with lots of people but I found out it wasn't guerrilla warfare but guerrilla warfare maybe in my 20s. The disappoints of growing up, they just keep coming. Dart. I'll take it a step further. I thought it was racist because I always heard about the guerrilla fighters in Africa. I was just like, dude, they're soldiers. You can keep that shit to yourself. Coca and cocoa are two different plants, not one magical organism, lol. If one plant gave us both cocaine and chocolate, that would be a compelling reason to believe there is a god and he wants us to fucking party. Edit. Oh wow, this blew up. Thank you for the awards and internet points. I think I was in college when I realized that Mario and Luigi are plumbers. I thought they just went and up down these tubes just because that was the theme of the game. I'm 44 and never made the connection between the pipes and the plumbers. OMG. Don't tell my kids, they'll never let me live it down. I thought that horses had toes until I was 22. I thought the hoof was a horseshoe and the toes were tucked inside. How did I learn how wrong I was, you ask? I was walking past a cavalry museum and saw a horse statue and loudly remarked it must hurt so bad when they fold a horse's toes to put them into the shoe. Dozens of horse enthusiasts turned and looked at me with wild bewilderment in their eyes. This one absolutely made me giggle. Just the visual of this happening is fantastic. I was probably 21 or 22 when I learned that whole milk is only 3% fat. I always thought it was 100, and when I saw reduced as being 2%, I thought, why wouldn't they do 50% or somewhere in the middle? Would 100% fat not just be literal fat? I used to think that the Diet Coke bottles on the side of the road, which were half full of pale yellow liquid, were unfinished Diet Cokes that had been bleached by the sun. About 2 years ago I saw one of these bottles being ejected from a truck and I realized the awful truth. I'm 53. My sister was in her 50s when she found out the meaning of, you have an addictive personality. She thought after all these years of therapy that it meant that people were addicted to her personality. We laugh hysterically when we talk about this, in a very sad way. Wait, does it mean like you get addicted to stuff? The saying is, nip it in the bud and not in fact nip it in the butt. Screenshot taken. Sent to my husband. A few months ago, 2 of my colleagues both handed in their notice at around the same time. I kept reading, hearing the sentence, they are both moving on to pastures new, being thrown about the office in the weeks leading up to them leaving, and I hadn't heard this phrase before and thought that was the name of the rival company that they were going to. I thought it was weird that nobody was talking about how they were both leaving for the same company. I was in the car with one of the ones who was leaving and said, so where is that you and X are going to be working? Is it? And just before I could embarrass myself and say pastures new, they interrupted me and said they are not going to the same place and asked me where I had heard that. I think at that moment I realized I was stupid and didn't mention it again. I personally have never heard someone say it that way. I've always heard new pastures. Edit. Greener pastures is what I was thinking. That pineapples grow on the ground, and not in a tree. I actually just learned this, just now, at 28 years old. Birds have sex. I thought that the mother bird laid the egg and the father fertilized it later. I was 18 and asked my mother what the birds were doing. To be fair, that's how some fish reproduce. When you're an adult, you shouldn't buy shoes that are a little loose, in case you get taller. Deleted. Not me, but my wife. My wife's dad always likes to mix idioms for fun, that is barking up a tree without a paddle. So a lot of times my wife will say something like twist my leg instead of twist my arm, and then when I get confused she'll stomp her foot and say dad. It's very cute. You should check out Armor Lafors, that's the whole sub and it really is the bee's pajamas. While watching Game of Thrones, I asked my husband when dragons went extinct. He had to pause the show for that one. St. George killed the last dragon. This is something my little sister did through high school. We're about 8 years apart, so we never overlapped in school. She's always been a straight A student, and I found out she worked extra hard because she wanted to catch up to me in school, so we could be in school at the same time. I almost cried. Edit. Thanks for all the awards. Never had any of those before. You've made a girl with the flu feel a little better today. And for those of you who asked, yes. My sister not only caught up, but surpassed me. She's a beautiful young woman who graduated with high honors in psychology and is going on to complete a master's degree. My little brother had a meltdown at the age of 4, when I informed him that he would never be older than me. Edited for clarity. I didn't know I was circumcised until I was 15 or 16. I was arguing with a girl online. I thought the head was the foreskin and that circumcision cut the actual head of the penis off. On the flip side, I didn't know I was uncircumcised until the same age. I always wondered why all the dick drawings looked a little different than mine. My parents also didn't teach me how to maintain myself, so that wasn't fun learning either. Edit. How wonderful. One of my top comments is about my uncircumcised dick. I expect nothing less from Reddit. My sister, a nurse, didn't learn until her mid-20s that rabbits did not in fact lay eggs. I have several nurse friends, and while they are quite capable, they tell me stories of some nurses that should have never graduated middle school. This story tracks. In the last year I found out peanut butter is brown. I'm 34. And horrendously colorblind, if that wasn't obvious. Edit. I thought it was green. Deleted. That it's not chest of drawers but a chest of drawers, lol. Just this week I found out about the little button on the back of the socket driver that pushes the socket off. I have owned the same socket set for about 30 years, and I have a dedicated screwdriver that I keep with my sockets and use to pry them off when I'm done using them. I will be 55 years old soon. I was pretty confused by the first socket wrench I owned that had the button. Prior to that I had only seen the type that you can just pull the socket off. I did take less than 30 years to figure it out. But it did take almost 30 minutes. You don't have to rip the plastic top off of your new deodorant with your teeth or pliers or anything. You can just turn the base until it comes up enough to just take it off. Oh my god. I should return this master's degree to the university. I thought that prima donna was prima donna and that it meant everything before the singer Madonna, and just assumed she was some kind of universal queen. I also thought it was prima donna, but I thought it just meant that the person was starting to behave like Madonna. Like they're prima donna now and will eventually go full Madonna. Jackalopes are mythical creatures. I was 18, I think. To be fair, I've seen a platypus, rhino, and a giraffe. Those are some BS animals. Narwhals. Narwhals are a real thing.